Well, in Sudan, there are reports of breaches in the latest ceasefire between the country's army and a paramilitary force who have been violently clashing for over a month now. A monitoring group set up to oversee the truce says the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, has been hit by airstrikes and artillery fire. The ceasefire, which began on Monday, which was designed to allow humanitarian aid into the capital as well as regions where refugees have fled the fighting. Neighbouring Chad is one country now giving shelter to tens of thousands of Sudanese. Our reporter Shola Lawal visited a refugee camp on the border with Sudan to see what conditions there are like.
Just a few days ago, Bornon Khamis Harun's life looked very different. Now, she is in Borota refugee camp in Chad.
I left my bed behind, my very nice house, my mats that were fine as well. I left them all behind.
Her home was in Darfur, in Sudan. It's a region known around the world for violence and hunger. But while her husband was alive, Bornon stayed. When he was killed in the latest conflicts back home, she took her 5 children and fled. They walked for days to get here. Despite the conditions, it feels safer. The camp is built out of scarves and sticks and not much else. There's a storm coming in right now, which means many people here will have no shelter from the rain. And right now, the houses are literally flying apart. Bornon and her children are just a few among thousands in this camp. Other camps nearby already host nearly 500,000 who fled Darfur years ago. Supplies and funds were tight in the region before the latest violence, aid workers say. Now, with people like Bornon and her family here, there is even less to go around.
Right now, we don't have enough. We worry about how to get enough supplies so we can help in time.
It's not just Sudanese people who are arriving. Camp Tomtoma here is for Chadians who are living on the other side of the border, but who fled the violence. They too bring stories of murdered relatives and ravaged villages, and they too are desperate. But because these people have come home, so are not technically refugees, aid is much slower to reach them. This well is supposed to supply water for 7,000 people.
There is no water, no food. The children sleep on cardboard without blankets. There is no hospital to help us. It is very difficult. We don't know what to do. People should come to our aid.
Everyone here is looking for safety. Those who left Darfur years ago, those who escaped the recent fighting in Sudan, and those who came home to Chad but found nothing. But aid organizations warn violence could spill over into the camps.
In terms of security, they're still located on the border. That's not very safe. They're still very close to their areas where they fled from. It's another job to find suitable sites to relocate them to, set them up and give them everything they need.
Back in Camp Borota, Bornon focuses on basic needs.
I have no clothes, no plastic tarps, no soap, and no grain. I don't even have simple grain to cook, to eat.
Her bigger hope is to return to a home that is just a few kilometers away, but that feels more distant with every ceasefire that Sudan's warring generals break.
Joining me in the studio is our reporter Shola Lawal, who filed that story. Good to see you. We saw in that report that rain was approaching the camps. What will that mean for people in these camps?
It's already very difficult, and I'm quite worried because the structures that they have right now are literally just sticks and scarves. And when people are lucky, they get plastic tarps. And what it means is that, of course, when the rain comes, they're literally just sitting there and they're getting drenched by the water and there's nowhere else to go. And it's not just the water coming, it's also the aid that is supposed to be getting to these camps that is going to be affected. The terrain that the trucks, the food trucks need to pass through from N'Djamena in the capital to those eastern far-off areas, it's quite difficult. They're literally just dirt tracks in the desert. And now imagine that sand being mixed with water, and now it's muddy. It's going to be extremely difficult for those food trucks to get to those people. And why that is crucial is because already 1 in 5 of those children on the camps is malnourished at this point. So they desperately need that food to be supplied regularly.
So people are desperate naturally to find safety and shelter. They are crossing the border into Chad. Is Chad equipped to deal with them, to help with them?
Fortunately not. Chad is already one of the least rich countries in the world at the moment. It already has its own economic problems, it already has its own political problems, just like Sudan. It's also caught in a democratic transition. But it's also hosting quite a number of refugees, also from Sudan, from past wars in the Darfur region. Nearly 500,000 people are already living in Sudan, also in that eastern part where many of these refugees are also coming to. So Chad is already, catering to those people. It's already stretched. And it's not just Chad, it's also the aid agencies as well. They already said before this emergency arrived, they were already very short on funding. And now with this, it just makes things much more difficult for everyone.
So in these camps, there are Sudanese people, but also Chadians living in Sudan who have returned home to escape the violence. Yeah. Are they getting equal access to the limited food and shelter that exists?
Absolutely not. Unfortunately, when aid is being channeled, everyone is looking for the Sudanese refugees and forgetting that there were people who lived in Sudan for a long time as well, who called this place home and who are now having to flee. They also have the same stories. They've seen the same desperate conditions, but unfortunately, they're not having that equal access. Actually, the very time that we were on that camp in Tumtuma, where the Chadians are, was the very first time that food aid was being distributed on that camp, after 6 weeks of fighting. So they're absolutely not getting the same attention. And I'm worried that if aid doesn't get there faster, the situation there will be much more dire in the next weeks.
DW reporter Sholeh Lawal, thank you so much.
Thank you.